Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Tara Dermott, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Global Forum for Responsible Recruitment session on promoting engagement in the apparel industry. The implementation of ethical recruitment requires a whole-of-system approach wherein each stakeholder, each touch point for a worker throughout their migration and employment experience is responsible to meet fair and ethical standards. Those engaging with the apparel industry know how complex and fragmented apparel supply chains are, often involving many suppliers across multiple continents. The production of textiles encompasses the complex process of growing or creating the raw textile material, spinning it into a fiber, weaving it into a fabric, dyeing and finishing it. Clothing production then involves the cutting, sewing, and finishing of a garment. And then there is distribution and retail. Just looking at the top tier of production and garment workers, we know that most garment workers are women. Many workers are migrant workers, whether internal or international. Migrant workers, they often make up a vital part of the workforce. Recruitment is often highly informal, whether job seekers are turning up at the gate of a factory within their home country or leveraging social networks for international recruitment. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the textile and apparel industry has been characterized by unpredictable demand, short product life cycles, quick response time, large product variety, and a volatile, inflexible, and complex supply chain structure. In recent years, environmental and social sustainability concerns are working to galvanize the industry. And as part of this, we are seeing a growing movement of high-level commitments to responsible recruitment principles. Multinational enterprises with supply chains spanning the globe are increasingly making commitments to ethical recruitment, pledging to create conditions where no worker pays for their job, where workers retain control of their travel documents and have full freedom of movement, and workers are informed of the basic terms of their employment before joining the workforce. We have also seen the growing influence of consumers and social media through targeted online campaigns and calls to action. What does this all mean for the ongoing and future implementation of ethical recruitment in the apparel industry? In this session, our impressive speakers will share learnings from their ongoing and diverse efforts to strengthen protection of migrant workers through ethical recruitment and what this means for the apparel sector. They will reflect on the unique needs, vulnerabilities, and opportunities to engage and empower women migrant workers. They will recognize the impact of the pandemic. They will also reinforce the recognition that there are important roles for all stakeholders to play in implementing ethical recruitment in the apparel sector, spanning public and private sectors. In the spirit of this forum, I also encourage you to share your observations and raise your own questions during the session. So without further ado, allow me to introduce you to our excellent panel. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Lilowtee Rajmun-Jooseery, Director of Mauritius Export Association, or MEXA. Lilowtee has 20 years of service and experience to the manufacturing and export sector of the country, backed by a long journey of involvement in industrial development and policy building. As Director of MEXA, Lilowtee leads one of the key and most important private organizations regrouping the industrial export-oriented companies of Mauritius. MEXA represents 88% of the total goods export sector of the country. Present contribution of the export sector to the Mauritian economy is 6% of the national GDP, 55,000 direct jobs, and over $1 billion of export turnover. MEXA's mandate is to promote the interests of the export community and to assist them to become world-class players through value-added services. Over its last 17 years of existence, MEXA has built strong goodwill with the government and its different related ministries and stakeholders. Such strong collaboration is crucial for a healthy relationship between government and the export sector. We also have with us Paweł Fecko, Chief Executive Officer at IPF Global. Paweł joined IPF Global in 2017 to lead the international staffing agency based in Poland and providing cross-border employment services across the EU. It specializes in skilled and unskilled workers and covers the entire life cycle of employment, starting with the recruitment process through the provision of transport and accommodation to the payroll services. Each year, IPF Global provides dozens of its customers in Europe with several thousand employees. Prior to joining IPF Global for over 15 years, Paweł was associated with the telecommunications industry, where he held various managerial and C-suite positions at private equity-held and listed cable TVs and landline operators, including Orange, Netia, and Inia. He was responsible for building sales structures, customer care management, and ensuring revenue growth. Paweł is a graduate of the Poznan University of Technology. And last, but certainly not least, we have with us Bala Murugan, Program Advisor at the Freedom Fund. Since 2015, Bala has led the Freedom Fund's work in Tamil Nadu, India, strengthening communities and worker groups in order to improve working conditions in the textile industry. Working with several other civil society networks, the Freedom Fund's NGO partners are part of the Tamil Nadu Alliance, which is a forum of over 100 organizations addressing risks of exploitation, especially of adolescents in the industry. The Alliance has launched the Tamil Nadu Declaration, an opportunity for businesses to commit to specific actions, including transparency in their supply chain, improved purchasing practices, worker-led monitoring, and an effective grievance mechanism in Tamil Nadu. Bala has more than 20 years' experience in child protection and in improving working conditions. Before joining the Freedom Fund, Bala worked as a child protection consultant with UNICEF, as well as working in government positions and for Save the Children in India. As well as holding various master's degrees, Bala has a PhD in philosophy from Gandhigram Rural Institute, Tamil Nadu. Thank you all of us for joining us today. I will now go through 2 rounds of questions with our speakers, asking each of them to keep responses to about 3 minutes so that we have ample time for Q&A before closing. My first question is for Lilowtee. As the sole private association in Mauritius regrouping the export companies, MEXA's membership represents diverse industries. Considering exports for the apparel industry in particular, how do you support your members to strengthen migrant worker protection? More specifically, what steps has MEXA taken to promote ethical recruitment and why?
Hello, everybody, and a very good afternoon and good morning to the lovely audience there. Thank you, Tara, for this question and giving me the opportunity of sharing the Mauritian experience. As you rightly mentioned, that the Mauritius Export Association, my membership are especially the apparel industry, and we have like a 30 years of working relationship with the apparel industry. Now, in terms of migrant workers, ethical management of our migrant workers is not an option for us in Mauritius. It's our duty. It's a must. And at the level of MEXA, which regroups the private companies employing the migrant workers, we started to work on the ethical management of our migrant workers like 2 decades back. Migrant worker became a reality of our employment forum in Mauritius as from 2 decades back. So basically, since 1990, we have been employing foreign migrant workers in Mauritius because we reached full employment and we had no option than to have recourse to migrant labor force. And since then, I must say that we started to look also at the welfare and well-being of our foreign workers. They became part of our society. We ensured that they integrate our society, the Mauritian society, fairly with all the rights, but with all the equal rights that the Mauritian worker should benefit. With MEXA, so basically being the voice of the private companies, we started to work with the government, first of all, to ensure that our labor laws provide equal rights to our migrant workers. That was the very foundation of it. We gave them the same legal rights that a Mauritian worker should have. Equal rights, equal pay, equal treatment, and fair treatment. Even the accommodations, in terms of the accommodations for our migrant worker, they were regulated by law. So basically, to ensure that they are well treated, we ensure that every step of their living is well captured in a text of law, and so that we ensure fair treatment by every companies. Now, secondly, as MEXA, regrouping the private organization, once the policy making was done, we also ensure that our employee, our membership, that is the companies, and treat our people well, ensure that there is a good environment for the migrant worker to live and work, and also enjoy the life that they have here. So basically, we constantly work with our companies. We study all the aspects of the living, the work of the migrant worker as well as their lives. So basically, we run constantly workshops, sensitization campaign whenever they are upgrading in terms of laws or special, even petty things, the entertainment, the leisure. We sit together, we regroup all our companies around a table, we discuss and ensure that at the end, what we come up is a list of activities, list of things, or even policy options that to promote the welfare of our migrant workers. Now, thirdly, what we also do as MEXA is that we go a third level in terms of the embassies. We have today in Mauritius, Bangladeshi worker, Malagasy worker, Sri Lankans, we have also Indians. As the private organization regrouping their companies, we also engage with the embassy. We keep a very good and direct dialogue with the ambassadors and even all their staff people, so that it's because they are the one who work with their people, with their nationals. They talk to the nationals very often. So it's very important that we also have a good dialogue with the embassies, so that whatever we have a dialogue, it's a forum, even if there are complaints or there is anything, it's a forum that we can handle all issues. Now, this is the third part of it. Fourthly, what we also do is that recently what we have come up is that to ensure that there is a fair and ethical treatment, an effective management of our migrant workers, we have also advised our government, we have suggested, even go beyond suggesting, advise our government that they embark into an MOU, they engage in a memorandum of understanding between government to government. That's what we want to do. For instance, in Bangladesh, there have been several exchanges on a G2G basis to come up with a formal MOU for the employment of expatriate workers, and that's under process. And that we want, if this happened and for the Bangladeshi case study, then we will also like to replicate such kind of MOU with other destinations, other countries where we employ our migrant worker. Last but not least, I hope so, it will never be the least, is that we are engaging with the IOM, International Organization of Migration, to come to work on, I would say, an ethical ethical foreign labor management certification scheme. We want to come up with a code of conduct and then develop that code of conduct for the management of our foreign people. We will then develop that code of conduct into a certification scheme. And we would ensure through that certification scheme, what we want to do is that we want to ensure that all our companies, they are certified according to that set of standards. We want it to be, we want to pitch it at the highest level to ensure that by so doing, then our members will have get certified according to that standard, to that level, to that set of standards, so that eventually by so doing, one after the other getting certified, and there is a constant monitoring along those standards, it will be a structured way to ensure that all our companies are adhering to the highest level of standards of treating their migrant workers in an efficient, ethical manner, ensuring their welfare all throughout the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Lilowtee. What a wonderful overview of MEXA's efforts to really embrace a multi-stakeholder approach to not only making commitments to ethical recruitment, but doing all that you can to support the diverse actors in your community to ensure that you can implement it as well. You shared a wealth of information from your vast experience in this. I'm wondering if you can maybe just let us know what kinds of challenges have there been specifically from the companies that you are engaging with your members? What kinds of challenges have they faced in actually implementing ethical recruitment and the highest international standards, as you have said, is important to MEXA?
Correct. There have been several challenges throughout that long journey. But what we do, as I forgot to mention about it, in Mauritius, what is good, what is beautiful, is that we always have a very good dialogue with the government. The private sector government dialogue is considered to be one of the best reference in the world. In terms of challenge, yes, we have been having several challenges, but I would like to lay emphasis on one specific challenge that we are still working on, and unfortunately we are not at the end of the tunnel. We have not seen the light at the end of the tunnel. As you know, that the migrant worker come from a foreign country. It's very difficult to know what's happened before that person get employed by us. You see, we go there, even if we send our people there for the recruitment, even if we send our company representative to go there and choose the person, do an induction for them, and we also ensure that we pay everything for them, the air tickets, all the fees there, all their air ticket to come to Mauritius. But we never know what's happened there in the other country. It's been said that there are agents and sub-agents in the countries, and at every stage there are fees that are paid, but we have no control. Even if we want to ensure we have as an objective that the person come to our country without having to pay any fees, but we have no control. We have absolutely no control what happened there at the level of agents and sub-agents. It's a never-ending process, and unfortunately, it's not transparent at all. And we, being in a foreign country, we can't manage that system. We can't have a complete overview of what's happening in that country before the person take the flight to come to Mauritius.
Thanks for flagging that very significant challenge. I mean, certainly the fact that international migration is cross borders, it crosses jurisdictions, it can make it quite challenging to do due diligence and to have any influence, as you said. But hopefully your work in engaging with the government to establish and strengthen MOUs, those government-to-government agreements that you mentioned, can help you to overcome that challenge at some point. So thank you, Lilowtee. I'm going to leave you for now and come back to you again soon. I'd now like to go to Paweł with IPF Global. So while IPF Global initially specialized in the food industry, you have since expanded your client portfolio to cut across diverse industries. Reflecting on your experience with practicing ethical recruitment, where have you seen success? And what are key challenges of which you think recruiters in the apparel industry should be mindful?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm very proud to be a part of this discussion. Well, in the beginning, I would like to mention that our task is not only recruitment, but we also take place in the entire life cycle of employment. So we are an international staffing agency. We employ the candidates ourselves and then lease them to our clients. It makes this easier because we know well our employees, but we also feel that we have to meet higher standards and expectations. Well, in every market, in every country that we operate, we try to obtain all the certificates that tells us about the quality of our services. And I don't think that I have to say it, but we also are a few notches above the law, the minimum standard. So we try to be the best for our candidates as we can. In fact, the most important step in the process of the whole life process of the employment is, in my opinion, well-organized recruitment. What I mean here is mainly communication, because it will not be possible to organize everything well if the candidate does not know all the details about his employment and the employer is not sure if the candidate meets his expectations. Well, this is why we have introduced procedures in every market that we operate on to ensure that the recruitment process is carried out the right way and the communication meets the highest standards. First of all, our employment proposals are always made in writing, and we include in them as many details as possible. This cannot be an advertisement. This should be very, very specific. It includes not only employment conditions, job responsibilities, but also the conditions in the accommodation units. The more photographs, the better, in fact. What really helps our recruiters is that we have a long-lasting relationship with our clients. So I am certain that we are fully aware of all the labor conditions that our candidates will meet when they arrive at our clients. Before candidates decide to leave his home country, we carry out the verification call with him, which is performed by the department that is independent of our recruitment. It aims basically at two things. First, by contacting the candidate, we can check how well she or he knows the job offer and whether they really know what the work will look like. But also, we know at what stage are the matters related to obtaining visa in the country of origin of the candidate. Do our candidates need any help with obtaining the documents? Well, if so, we really help in that. In our case, the recruitment process takes frequently even 6 or 8 weeks. So we want to be sure at every step that both we and our client are ready for the candidate's arrival and that everything is all right on the candidate's side. Recently, we've been putting more and more emphasis on video communication. We try to convey the working conditions and also the qualification of candidates through short videos. As you know, written information can be interpreted in various ways. Not always the person who creates the message has the same in mind as the person reading it. In addition, it happens that employer names the job in such a way that it causes the candidate to feel that the salary is sometimes inadequate. Therefore, we ask the employer to be able to record a short film of work in a given position. Our experience shows us that most employees perform most of their activities in a repetitive manner, and it can be included in a several second film. So the same situation with the employee. For example, a welder is able to present his skills in a short film, and an experienced foreman, based on this video, is very likely to assess the candidate's qualifications.
Great. Thank you, Paweł. So many good recommendations there. I mean, first of all, your emphasis on communication and really transparency, making sure that both the worker and the employer have all the information that is needed. Also, the emphasis on long-standing relationships. That is certainly a good practice. and your practice of verifying, having those calls with candidates to make sure that everything is clear. That's a really wonderful way of monitoring. And it was also interesting to hear about your increasing emphasis using videos. And I really liked the example that you gave in terms of using video to ensure skills matching for job placement. So my quick follow-up question to you, Paweł, is, so recognizing that the garment industry is and has historically been one of the most female-dominated industries in the world, how should gender considerations inform efforts to strengthen ethical recruitment?
Well, we operate on different European Union markets. We operate in Poland, France, the Netherlands, Germany, and also Eastern European markets such as Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. Practically in every country, we employ migrant workers, and many of them are in fact women. And although the European Union has so-called common market, however, in my opinion, regulations concerning the employment of migrants and concerning the activities of temporary employment agencies differ significantly in individual countries. Well, our efforts go back more than 10 years in setting up the right standards in ethical recruitment. We are very aware of the importance because we are responsible for the whole employment life cycle. We organize transport, accommodation, we look after the employees throughout this recruitment process, travel, and the whole employment, including commute. As far as possible, we arrange for the employee all the formalities related to the legality of stay and work, and if some activities must be dealt with directly by the employee, we assist in this process. We do not have any problems with recruiting female employees. Well, in fact, in my opinion, it is much more difficult to find skilled male blue-collar workers. And in fact, in the European Union, there is more demand for qualified male workers. However, what I would like to emphasize here is that we are trying to establish perennial relationship with our employees, and especially for women, it is much more difficult to live longer periods abroad without their families. So in ideal circumstances, we would like her husband also to go and work somewhere nearby, and ideally the children can go to school, in that area. So we try to convince employers whenever it's possible that it's the best way to employ couples. It is the best for us, for the customers, and for the clients, but especially for our candidates or employees, that they can stay as long as they want in the destination country. So we are also prepared to have separate housings for female and male employees, and also for the couples. I think that this part of life, which is not directly connected to the employment, is very, very important, especially for female employees. Well, we also have so-called coordinators who are the same nationality as our migrant workers, and their sole responsibility is to be among our staff and help them in all things related to work and everyday life. They also ensure that our employees understand professional and safety trainings and materials. Well, they are also very helpful in facilitating communication with our clients. To sum it up, we cooperate only with clients who are fair with our employees. If we receive any signals that something is wrong at the factory floor, we check it immediately. And if the problems persist, we do not hesitate to terminate the cooperation. And I must tell that we already had such cases.
Thank you, Paweł. I really appreciate the fact that you do oversee that entire sort of life cycle of employment. So it means that it does position you well to monitor the success of the job placements. I also think it's interesting that you invest time in negotiating with employers or opening employers, thinking to longer term contracts and possibly employment arrangements that are inclusive of children and family. I'm going to come back to you in a couple minutes. I'd like to go to Bala now, and I'd like to continue this discussion of potential needs for women workers and how we can best protect their rights at work. So, Bala, recognizing that your work with the Freedom Fund is highly focused on protecting women and girls in the textile industry in Tamil Nadu, what do you see as being priority areas for consideration regarding ethical recruitment of women workers?
Greetings to all, and thanks, Tara, for the question. So if you are a retailer or a brand, then you have to ensure that ethical recruitment is happening in your supply chain. It means that you need to know more about your supply chain. If you stop at only knowing about your first year of production, then it is a toleration of anything that could be happening in production of fabric and yarn. So in order to get this knowledge, the apparel industry needs to slow down, and it needs to establish very different kinds of relationships. It's a very fundamental choice for the industry. We know that it will not happen overnight, but however, we need to aim at the incremental changes. So if retailers and brands have the kind of supply chain where they can see what is happening, then I suggest the following priorities with their suppliers they have to ensure. The first thing, ensuring that adolescents, especially the girls below 18s, are not recruited. So by practice, when we work with the mills, and we were able to ensure that the girls under 18 are not ensured, many mills, they have displayed the board. So we have formed a worker support group. They lobby with the management and sensitize the management, and we were able to achieve. This has to be scaled up and done at the entire supply chain. Then the second thing about the conditions of employment should be explained to the workers. We found that false promises are given to the women and girls about working and living conditions. When actually they land up in the working spot, they find a different scenario than the promised thing. So the third thing about the issuing of an appointment letter to all the employees, we suggest a hard copy of the contract should be given to the workers, all the women and girls, in the language which they can understand. As of now, there is no contract existing between the management and the worker. Even if it is there, it will be in English, or or it will be kept only with the management for record purpose. It is not available with the workers. So if the worker does not know their pay rate, working hours, place of work, job title, and other terms and conditions before they come for the work, then they are subject to the exploitation. Then their right to recruitment without fees should be ensured. So the workers should not out of pocket for the expenses for joining their job. And another thing, the many girls and women, the families are given advance for bringing them to the work. So we should, it amounts to the bonded labor. So we need to, the brands need to ensure that the suppliers are not giving the advance or making them debt involved in the process. Then before joining the work, job-specific occupational health and safety training to the women workers should be given. As of now, if you see, there is no induction training. Once they are immediately join the work and start working in it without understanding the hazards or risk in the work site. So that needs to be ensured. Then another thing, what from our experience, what we suggest, we need to encourage the suppliers to develop recruitment policies and implement and ensure that they are using ethical recruitment agencies for their employment needs. So there are different layers of agents in between the management and the actual source and destination area. So that needs to be sorted out, and ethical recruitment agencies should be employed for the employment needs. And after joining the work, follow up with workers at regular intervals should be done. So to assess whether they are, the company policies are followed, whether all the norms and regulations are followed as per the government, everything, to adhere that, we need to follow it up. So beyond the actual recruitment, then we are back to focusing on the working condition. At that point, the principles of worker-led monitoring and realistic access to grievance mechanisms or procedures that we have already calling on the brands in our declaration, and freedom of association. These things are very essential. So we need to enable the women workers to set the priorities for improvement in the workplace. Let them, they have to listen to them and on what does safety and decent work mean to them, and what does freedom of association and freedom of movement means to them. So that needs to be discussed with them, and they need to develop a plan and act on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bala, for those really concrete recommendations to buyers to really move beyond their top tier and to get further down into their supply chain and to establish the partnerships that can help them to understand what is the situation of the workers in their supply chain, including women workers, and to help inform their due diligence and their response. So sort of stemming from that, what do you see as the role of civil society organizations or community-based organizations to really support, to strengthen protection of migrant workers and implementation of ethical recruitment in the apparel industry?
The role of civil society organizations is very crucial in this process. So they have to work with migrants, trade unions, mill associations, local panchayat and government departments. So there's a direct role of working with the migrant workers and other workers group, and there is a role of supporting better government performance. For example, in terms of the direct role, Tamil Nadu Alliance member organizations are going to be working with IOM to directly reach out to migrant workers across hundreds of settlements and workplaces in Tamil Nadu, to help them know that by law now they have the right to an appointment letter. This would put them in a much stronger position to know the wages they should be getting, the work they will be doing, etc. It will really help to put an end to the false promises and repeated exploitation of these workers. And also we are planning to start a helpline and resource center for them. So it will also help them to a greater extent. As of now, they do not have any grievance mechanism or do not have access to the government. That's another thing. Then we are also in the position to help migrant workers to form groups and connect to the local authorities about the conditions of their living conditions, lack of water, sanitation, decent housing that they are suffering. A lot of issues they are facing. And the third thing, they are also invisible community in Tamil Nadu. So actually, nobody has the total number of migrant workers working in garment and textile supply chain in Tamil Nadu. So now we are working with the government to develop a portal. Already the government has developed the portal. What the gap we identified is that the migrant workers themselves cannot register in the portal. Now we work with the Department of Labor to develop a mobile-based application which will be accessible to the migrant workers. They can register themselves. It means once they are registered in the migrant workers portal, they will be linked with the unorganized welfare board. That's the thing we are doing it. So we support the government to do that. And also most of the migrant workers, they are staying in the hostels. As per in Tamil Nadu, the hostel, all the hostels should be registered, which is meant for women and girls, but it is not done. So now we are working with the government to ensure that it is done. So we support the government by developing a module and orienting the government officials as well as the mill managements and association members, so that they will ensure that the people, migrant workers staying in the hostels are taken care. So all these things. Then also we work with the trade union. So the trade union, due to the language barrier, they focus only on workers, those who speak Tamil. Now we are working with them and ensure that they reach out to the migrant workers and also address their issue. So these are some of the, and also, the children of migrant workers, that's another important thing. The children of migrant workers do not have access to early childhood care and development, and also right to education. So that we need to ensure that they are given education in their language, and we need to improve the opportunities for education, the early childhood care, and by the way, we can reduce the risky recruitment, because the adolescent girls, if they do not have the access to the education, then naturally they go with the parents to the work. They enter into the work at an early age. So these are some of the things we can do. So it needs a comprehensive approach. The CSOs cannot, because there is no limit. We need to work with all the people and establish the thing, and also claiming the entitlements for the migrant workers. That's another thing, working with the government and mill management and association to ensure that the wage due, provident fund, ESI, all these mandatory things are reaching the migrant workers.
Thank you so much, Bala. Clearly, there is huge scope for what civil society organizations can do to support diverse stakeholders, whether it's the employers and management at the workplace or government, and of course the workers themselves. And you shared a very exhaustive list ranging from disseminating information to workers about their rights, operating independent and trustworthy helpline grievance mechanisms. You also talked about liaising with government to push sort of policy and implementation that would be most protective for workers. So thank you very much for that. In fact, thank you for all of the speakers for giving such detailed and comprehensive answers to the questions. And there are so many questions coming from the audience that I'm actually going to skip the second round of questions that I had for you and go straight to some of the questions from our audience. So Lilowtee, the first question for you is from Nguyen. And the question is, what do you think about the employer pays principle that migrant workers should not bear any recruitment fees or costs?
Well, we believe in it. I think that while recruiting, we firmly believe that workers should not pay any recruitment fees, and that's why we as MEXA, we have our employers, and as well as MEXA, we ensure that we pay all the recruitment fees involved all throughout the process, the agent fees in the country, all the some of if ever they have some health tests to do, everything. So we do that as well. When they come to Mauritius, their airfare, all the tests required by the Mauritian government, again, all are taken up in charge by the employers. So basically, that's what we are. We have been practicing. We will continue to do so. And that's where our worry is, because when we are doing all those effort in ensuring that when the person come, they are not indebted, we don't have visibility of what's happening in their country. What are the different levels that they have to undergo before coming to the point that we come into play. So basically, eventually, we would like to have full transparency. In fact, that's why we are at the level for the case of Bangladesh. We are working with our government, and that's why we're encouraging our government to get into an MOU with the Bangladeshi government, so as to ensure that transparency level. We are even working with IOM in Bangladesh through our IOM office in Mauritius, a wonderful collaboration from their part to ensure that to work on that transparency objective in the country of origin of our migrant workers.
Great, thank you, Lilowtee. And actually, you also partially answered another question for you from Pratima with Strathclyde University. And Pratima also wanted to know how the recent changes in the Workers' Rights Act may affect migrant workers in Mauritius.
Oh, there is no change.
Okay.
There is completely no change because we have a basic principle that we adhere to. That principle is equal rights for the Mauritian and the migrant worker. There is no distinction at all. So basically, even if there has been, last year, in 2019, we had quite some changes. The government brought some changes to the existing labor law, and there was now the Worker Rights Act. But if you go through the Worker Rights Act, the right of the migrant worker is still protected. And they are enjoying the same rights as a Mauritian worker. Completely no distinction at all.
Great. I'm happy to hear that. Paweł, I have a question for you from Morris, who asks, what steps do you take to empower migrant workers, especially those with language or cultural barriers?
In Europe, we have at least a few countries that we work on that are very difficult for some candidates, I would say, language-wise. For example, it's very difficult for Poles to speak French in France, but we try to offer our candidates, especially in the medical industry, free courses that somehow will prepare them for the conditions that they will meet in another country. Well, another thing is that we have here on sites everywhere coordinators, as I mentioned before, and all the coordinators are natives of the country of origin of our candidates. So when there are some kind of issues related to cultural or language barriers, well, everybody can ask coordinator, and coordinator's sole responsibility is to help with this issue. Another thing that we introduced a few years ago is a hotline that all our employees and candidates can use, and it's operated in their native language. And they can ask about all the things connected to the country of their employment. I would like to also mention that our staff is responsible for the translations of the materials that are required on site, like, for example, manuals or the safety training, professional training. So all the things are done in the language of our candidates, or in the language that is fully understood for our candidates or the employers.
Great. Thank you, Paweł. Definitely the coordinators who are native to the countries of origin, and the fact that you do so much in-house to make sure that those strong communications with workers, which you mentioned in your first response, are there. I think that's excellent. Bala, I have a question for you from Pratima, who says, COVID-19 has badly hit the apparel industry. Has your organization, so has the Freedom Fund, seen any protections from loss of jobs by migrant workers in apparel?
Yeah, definitely it's an unprecedented incident. It affects all the workers. And during COVID, as Tamil Nadu Alliance, Freedom Fund is also part of Tamil Nadu Alliance, we ensured that the migrant workers are arranged for transport back to their home. And also, when they want to come back, that's also we ensured. Then dry rations and other things were not given by the government. We brought it to the notice of the government, and we ensured that the fund is allocated around more than 100,000 migrant workers, they received it. And what are the issues, when it comes to us, immediately we work with the Department of Industrial Safety and Health under State Commission for Women, and we address the issue. So a lot of wage dues and other claims, immediately we bought and we started it out and we sent them back. Now they are coming back, and now again the wave second, it also created a fear among the migrant workers, and some of them are started moving. Now we are planning and we are working with the government to stop this, and we want to work with the mill management, and we are going to initiate a dialogue so that their work is protected and their safety is protected. So we are in the process.
Great. Thank you, Bala. I have another question for Lilowtee, which might be a very quick question. It's from Neil. He asks, are women workers, including married couples, paid the same as men?
Of course, we have no distinction between male and female in Mauritius. In 1988, I think it was in 1988, the government came up with a set of law to ensure equal payment for equal work for men and women. So basically, no distinction at all between women and men in Mauritius.
It's excellent. I wish we saw that everywhere. And Paweł, another question to you from Axel, who is a fellow recruiter from Cierto in Mexico. Axel asks, what certifications do you recommend for fair, responsible, and ethical recruitment?
Well, recently we've joined with IHRB, and we started preparing for the certificate of the UN migration team, and we are quite advanced in this. So I think that's the one, the best one that you can have right now, because it's widely recognized, and also the great organization that stands behind this certificate. I must say that the standards that you have to meet in this certification are quite high. But on the other hand, we didn't have many problems in meeting these requirements. When you try to do everything as good as possible, you don't have to improve in order to get certification. What we had to do is put some things that we already do into the procedures, and that's what we had to do. On the other hand, there are, especially in Europe, there are specific certificates for specific countries. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this telecast, we try to get those certificates on every market that we operate. And it's not so difficult for us, but it's some kind of threshold that we will never go below. And that's why we want to always measure against this threshold and be even better than that. Because to be quite honest, we compete for the best candidates, and we want to give them the best treatment as possible. And we also are very transparent to them, and we want to show them that we are transparent. When the candidate makes the decision about answering to a job ad, in many cases they have only a few seconds or a few minutes to make a decision. So you have to distinguish yourself with a good message to the candidate. And we don't want to compete with some kind of mumbo jumbo that is just made up. But we want to give very quality service to our candidates, and having a certificate or a bunch of certificates is the best way to prove it.
Great. I'm glad to hear that you're so far along in the IRIS certification process. I know it is really comprehensive. And it also sounds to me like Axel should maybe follow up with you bilaterally at this forum to find out some of the more specific certificates from various jurisdictions where you recruit. Before we go to closing, I have one question for Bala from Ron, he asks, what role has technology played in strengthening efforts to protect migrant workers? And you did remark a little bit about an application that you are promoting in coordination with the Indian government right now. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, actually, technology is very, very important because the magnitude of the migrant workers is very high in Tamil Nadu. There are lakhs and lakhs of people. So by having, just having a portal will not help. And another thing, accessing the portal with the good internet facilities, another problem. So that's why we work with the Department of Labor to develop a mobile application. Almost the application is developed. So we are waiting for the next government to form. Here, the election is going on. So in May month, the Department of Labor will release. And the Tamil Nadu Alliance will support the government and migrant workers in their settlements. So already we have identified hundreds of settlements and also identify the migrant workers staying in the hostels. So we ensure that this mobile application is used by the people, and once they enter the data, they will be, by default, will be linkage. So there should be some kind of incentive so that they will come forward to register voluntarily. So that's what we are aiming at. Once they are registered, those who are eligible for registration under unorganized welfare board, they will get benefits from unorganized welfare board. So those who are eligible for public distribution system, that they will be linked with that. Those who are eligible for social insurance scheme, they will be linked with that. So technology has a very vital and crucial role in ensuring the protection and safety of the migrant workers. Likewise, all the national government is also planning to launch a portal, and each state government is also doing something. Now we are requesting through IOM, already we have reached out to Nidhi Aayog to bring synergy among all the portals. So whenever they enter into the national level portal, it has to be supported by the state level portal. So there should be a linkage. Otherwise, it will be a standalone activity. So technology has to be used to the maximum, and it should be accessible to the migrant workers. That's what we are aiming at.
Wonderful. That's such a great example. And I mean, just through that one example, you really highlighted that technology has to be accessible. It also should be complementary to other things, right? That it needs to work with other technologies and other platforms. And also your plan to actually promote it and ensure that migrant workers are onboarded to the technology. I think that was a really great example. Well, gosh, there are so many questions coming in, and I wish we had more time because all of you have provided such wonderful insights from your experience. So while our time together for this discussion is coming to an end, there are clearly many opportunities for all of us to continue to share learnings, resources, and recommendations to strengthen our efforts to protect migrant workers. So to everyone who tuned in for this session, please do explore the resources available on the event platform and connect directly with other participants. Now, before closing, we have about 2 minutes left. So I would like to invite each of our speakers to share one key recommendation or one key takeaway they have for all of us to strengthen ethical recruitment in the apparel industry. And Lilowtee, if I can go to you first. Really quick recommendation.
Well, for us, ethical recruitment is a must. The issue is about protecting our migrant workers. And in Mauritius now, what we know with the problem of COVID, which is really paralyzing every economy of the world, in Mauritius, we are vaccinating our migrant worker. This is the initiative that we have taken, and government is helping us in giving priority to our migrant workers to get vaccinated. And I must say that 80% of our migrant workers, especially the Bangladeshi workers, have been vaccinated because they are key to our textile industry. They are key to our economy. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, including migrant workers in national vaccination plans. Excellent. Paweł, what is your key recommendation?
Well, I'm sure that ethical recruitment is a must. Being transparent and being fair is a must. And if you want to have robust business, you cannot build it from scratch every year. So you have to have a good relationship with your candidates, with your employees. Otherwise, you will recruit every year, new people, and the people that you already have will go somewhere else. So ethical recruitment, to sum it up, is the key to build a robust business.
Wonderful. Thank you for making that business case for ethical recruitment. And Bala, the last word is with you. What is your key recommendation?
Yeah, thank you. Already we have shared that Tamil Nadu Alliance has developed the declaration which calls on brands and retailers. So we request the brands and retailers to sign the declaration if you are in the apparel businesses. Then join with us to create ethical supply chain, because our declaration is very comprehensive. It includes ethical practices, transparency in the supply chain, grievance redressal mechanisms, and worker-led monitoring system, and sustainable purchase practices. Please sign the declaration. Only thing what we can assure you, all of us have the role and the duty to ensure that the workers are safe and the ethical recruitment practices are in place in the entire supply chain. Jointly, we can make change. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. And that is the perfect note to end on. So thank you again, Bala, Paweł, and Lilowtee. Thank you also to everyone who joined us at the Global Forum for Responsible Recruitment and joining our global community to protect migrant workers. The next session is Business Actions to Drive Change in Recruitment Practices, starting in 30 minutes. So I hope to see you there. Thank you again, and take care, everyone.